So I think if they reduce the mobilization age, lower the service age, it will not change the situation on the battlefield like it didn't for Hitler's Germany. But it will be one of the series of crimes they commit against their people. It doesn't protect the interests of the Ukrainian people. Such a decision would only protect the decisions of those who give decisions from abroad. That is the only motivation. Young boys will be herded and sent to be slaughtered. We saw how they are being caught in the streets like stray dogs and sent to face the bullets. And now they'll be sending young boys to do that. And after they have run out of the resources, they will flee to other countries to hide under the wing of those who are giving orders today.
Первый есть.
Руки вверх!
Сейчас, смотрите, я снимать буду.
Вылазь!
Давай, давай, выходим. Второй, выходи. Давай.
At a command post in the north, Major Ivan Bakrev is candid about Ukraine's troubles in the salient. The artillery commander in the 82nd Air Assault Brigade says Vladimir Putin's men are tightening the screws, and that was so even before the alleged and unproven North Korean soldiers began to join the battle. The Russians enjoy a massive advantage in almost everything: men, artillery, machines, and switch between mechanized and infantry assaults to powerful effect. The British media giant The Economist reports that Ukraine has already lost about half of the territories it once controlled. The reserves, they say, began when Ukraine swapped out elite units for less hardened ones in late September. That was a mistake, the Major reckons. Now the Russians are trying to choke off their main grouping from Ukraine proper by attacking on the east and west flanks. In quotations, every unit in Kursk has switched to defense, he says. The Ukrainian narrative is that the urgency of Russia's counterattack appears to be tied to Donald Trump's impending inauguration. They say that President Putin wants Kursk to be a done deal by January 20th, rather than an embarrassing topic for discussion. The Russian narrative, however, is quite the opposite.
I'm gonna skin you!
The Russians say that it is Ukrainian leader President Volodymyr Zelensky who has reportedly ordered troops to hold on to Russian lands at all costs until Donald Trump is inaugurated, as reported by RT News. Indeed, Trump has indicated that he wants the bloodshed to end as soon as possible. Meanwhile, at an extended meeting of Russia's Defense Board, the Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov made some insightful statements about Russia's strategic plans for 2025, and more interestingly, his estimates of Ukraine's casualties. So all this and more in today's update. But before we begin, I ask that you continue to support this channel by super thanks donations and consider making a purchase from the online merch shop, which has a limited 25% off discount for the next 6 days for the Christmas season. Link is in the description, and let's get into it.
Пытается туда. Все пизда.
We are holding on, though the conditions on and underground are getting grimmer. Rain, slush, snow, cold, mud, beetles, worms, rats, and glide bombs. These were the words of Ruslan Mokritsky, a 33-year-old non-commissioned officer in the 95th Air Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. The Russians dropped as many as 40 glide bombs on one position in the space of a few hours, he says. In Kursk, death is always close. It practically holds your hand. He complimented the Ukrainian armed forces for finding ways to respond to new challenges. If the Death Star showed up above us, he said, we would figure a way out. He has only one fear, and that is, what would happen to his two young children if he were 200'd, which is a military code for being killed in action. Now, 4.5 months in, the Kursk invasion, born at a moment of desperation for Ukraine, whose commander-in-chief, Alexander Syrsky, was facing the sack, the incursion did not achieve its goal of diverting troops from Russia's main effort in Donetsk province. These words were a stark admission from even the most pro-Ukrainian Western media sources. The incursion has cost Ukraine some of its elite troops. A Ukrainian journalist working for a local newspaper in the area bordering the Kursk region no longer covers the incursion because they know too much to be the official line that it was Ukraine's great and only triumph of 2024, they told The Economist. Russian President Putin stated on Monday during the aforementioned year-end meeting at the Defense Ministry that the operation makes no military sense. Whoever you ask, our and foreign military experts all believe that this thing in Kursk is an adventure, the Kursk adventure they call it, President Putin said. The Russian military estimates Ukrainian losses during the Kursk incursion at over 41,000. And other statements at the Russian defense meeting are as follows.
США объявили нашу страну источником непосредственной и постоянной угрозы. Проводят к 2030 году модернизацию всех компонентов ядерной триады.
The Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov estimated that the Ukrainian army lost more than 500,000 servicemen in 2024 only, and a total of over 1 million since the escalation of the conflict with Moscow in 2022. He went further. He said at the extended meeting of Russian Defense Board that most units of Kiev's army on the front line were severely understaffed, with only 40 to 50% of positions filled. The combat potential of Kiev's troops has been undermined. This year alone, the losses of the Ukrainian armed forces exceeded 560,000 servicemen, either killed or wounded, adding that during Ukraine's Kursk invasion, Kiev lost more than 40,000 soldiers. Thirdly, he noted that the Russian armed forces firmly hold the strategic initiative along the entire line of combat contact. The average daily advance of troops has significantly accelerated and is about 30 square kilometers. The enemy is being forced to go on the defensive and use its remaining reserves. Fourthly, he noted that he also said that Russia's high-precision weapons have caused significant damage to Ukraine's military-industrial complex and the energy system supporting it, with Kiev largely losing the ability to produce the necessary weapons, equipment, and ammunition. In 2024 alone, the Russian military destroyed some 58,000 units of various weapons and equipment of the Ukrainian armed forces, he specified. When these comments are pieced together along with the Associated Press report in November citing anonymous lawyers and military officials who claims that more than 200,000 Ukrainian soldiers have quit their ranks this year alone, with entire units fleeing their frontline positions, the picture is beyond desperate for the Ukrainian armed forces on the front. And this reality is evidenced not only by the grim reports coming from the Kursk front.
Держим оборону, да. Как можно, да.
Нахуй это, братан.
Это пизда, короче. Нас тут заебашивают всем, чем можно, нахуй.
Ukraine's military leadership has changed the commander of the Donetsk tactical group amid Russia's continued advance toward the city of Pokrovsk in southwestern Donbass. The replacement of General Alexander Lutsenko was announced on Friday by Ukrainian MP Mariana Bezuglaya on Telegram. Pokrovsk is the largest population center under Ukrainian control in the west of the Donetsk People's Republic. It has gone from a major supply hub for the frontline forts to being on the front line itself. What is worse for Ukraine is a man whom they decided to replace General Lutsenko with, a General Alexander Tarnavsky, who took part in the failed sudden counteroffensive in 2023. The general commanded the Ukrainian forces operating in the city of Avdiivka when Russian forces captured it. Tarnavsky claimed the chaotic retreat of Ukrainian forces from Avdiivka was in fact going according to plan. The co-chairman of the Council on Integrating Russia's New Territories, Vladimir Rogov, connected the change of commander with the difficult situation for the Ukrainian troops. In quotations, the urgent change of the commander is symbolic. The enemy directly points to the disastrous and difficult situation on the Pokrovsk and Kurakhove directions, he told Russian media RIA Novosti. And the frontline situation is no different further south near Kurakhove. Yulia Abramova, a Ukrainian journalist, wrote in her article entitled "The Kurakhove Direction is Crumbling" that Ukrainian infantry is tired because of the fighting going on around the clock. The front is gradually crumbling as the Russians have moved some of the reserves there from Pokrovsk. This was reported by Stanislav Bonyatov, platoon commander of the 24th ADAR. The main emphasis is on breaking through lines with military equipment, cutting off positions and creating pockets. He said the exhausted Ukrainian infantry will, and I quote, be replaced by almost no one. The situation is also not very good for shells for artillery and mortars. The Russians have hung their flag on the premises of the Kursk City Council and continue to advance, gradually occupying the central part of Kurakhove city. Bonyatov called the full occupation of Kurakhove only a matter of time. Ukrainian military expert Sergei Gurets described the situation in the Kurakhove direction as particularly difficult, as the number of combat clashes remains high. There is one complicated nuance, he said. It is good that Ukrainian troops have left the encirclement south of Kurakhove to Ospenivka. Ukrainian defenders withdrew, although there were losses, but they were not as significant as they could have been, he claims. The Ukrainian military reported that the losses were caused by Russian drone attacks, but in general, the losses are less than they could have been. If the order had been given a little earlier, perhaps this withdrawal would have been much easier. Another detail of this section of the front line is that Russian troops keep trying to encircle it. In particular, in the Kurakhove direction, the village of Zelenivka, located on the road between Donetsk and Zaporizhia, was captured. This road leads from Kurakhove to Zaporizhia. Currently, Russian troops are trying to cut this road from different directions to make it more difficult for Ukrainian defenders to hold Kurakhove. There are two main threats in this area. The first is that the Russian troops advance from the west of Sonstivka and Staryturny to the highway. The second is the capture of Zelenivka and the risk of further Russian advance to the highway from the south. We will see how the Ukrainian Defense Forces Command reacts to this and how these risks will be mitigated. All of these realities leads me, as well as many commentators in the West, to conclude that President Putin and his defense minister's words at the meeting of the Defense Board about Russia's 2025 goals to be not only true, but realistic. The 4 Ukrainian regions Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed to have annexed in 2022, but still does not fully control, will be captured in their entirety next year, Russia's Defense Minister Andrei Belousov has said. But stay tuned for my detailed frontline update, which will be published either later today or tomorrow. In the meantime, get yourself updated with the recent Russian breakthrough to the south of Pokrovsk, which was captured in my latest video report, which you can find right here.